Welcome, everyone. This is Coaching a Session. My name is Michael Rearden, and I will be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about how we can get over that hump of mental performance. Mental performance is going to be one of those things, whether it be sports or your personal career, big tech, IT, entrepreneurship. It doesn't necessarily matter the avenue that you're currently in. What matters is that every job is going to have some inherent stress. That stress can come from just it being a tedious type of work, fast-paced environment, bad bosses, working with tough clients or working with tough coworkers. I mean, we can go down the list of what can cause a lot of hardship and negativity in the workplace. But there is going to be a mindset that we do have to understand. And the mindset is we can choose to be positive or we can choose to be negative. I have found that people will choose to be negative more than they will be positive. They will wait for a trauma. They will wait for a hardship because it's easier to do. Though we don't want to get into that way of thinking or that type of mentality, there is a focus that we do have to apply in our life. And creating that awareness to our fears, to our doubts, to our limits is going to be the secret sauce for us to become successful finally, to conquer our mental health, and then from there to prosper, and then from there to grow. Because the people who are dealing with all their hardship, all their struggle, their anxiety, and they just kind of have a passive approach to it, they're going to be dealing with that longer term than the people who have taken up the duty, the responsibility to say, my life right now might not be exactly what I want it to be. Let me make some changes. I'm not getting the results I want right now. Let me start to get those results. How do you do it? Today, we're going to be talking about that with my guest, Jeff Butorac, who's going to be a mental health performance life coach. He's going to be helping us understand about his journey, how we are wired as people, how we have that negativity bias, and then how to start to get over that, how to prepare, how to program ourselves so we can start to win. How can we be the champions that we're supposed to become? So let's get into the interview with Jeff and myself. Welcome, Jeff Butorac, to Coaching a Session. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much. Doing well. How about yourself?
Doing well. Thanks so much for coming on. Today, I have you on as a mental and performance coach. The work that you do is not just helping people get into the right state of mind. It's elevating their whole entire life. And I love your saying, right? Learn to silence that internal rival we have within us. And it's so important that we do that because we have some demons inside of us that are going to be our limiting beliefs that tell us that we can't do things in our life. On the contrary, we can do some amazing things. And the work that you do is helping people unlock that potential. But in your own words, can you please tell the world who you are, what you do, and how you help them?
Absolutely. Well, in my previous life, I used to be a basketball coach. That's how I kind of got into the world of sports. Dealt with a lot of anxiety and some panic attacks, which took me out of that. And then so I dove into the world of everything: mental toughness, self-help, self-confidence, self-talk, anything to do with your mental well-being. And I tried to learn as much as I possibly could into that world. And as I did that, I started finding a few things. One of them is that we all have this negativity or way that we view the world through a negative lens built into our DNA. We're not weird for looking at things that way, but that is our inner rival. Our inner rival is that negative voice that holds us back from going after new goals, accomplishing different events. It's the voice that keeps us on the couch when we know we should work out, or eating fast food when we know we should eat something healthy. It's just sort of that voice that everybody has. Some people call it the inner critic. I like inner rival because that's our biggest rival in life. Our biggest competition is that, 6 inches, 8 inches between your ears and above your shoulders. It sort of came up with this concept of silencing all this negativity. And I've gone and done as much as I could to show how I can prove this scientifically, these different things that we can do to scientifically lower this negativity that's in our head, or at least use examples from my life, examples from, different athletes, performers, of things that they've done to push themselves to this amazing height and silence that negative voice in their heads.
You piqued my interest when you said negative lens and it's intertwined in our DNA. What does that necessarily mean? So if someone is born, they're just automatically negative, or is it something that we just have to grow out of because it's the systems we learn through society?
No, it's actually in your DNA. So that's how we've survived as a species forever. If I was in my village 50, 100,000 years ago, I need to worry about animals that could eat me. How am I going to find food? What's the weather like? I need to stay in touch with my tribe. Otherwise, I get exiled. I'm going to die. So there's all these different things. If you look at them all in a positive view, right? So, like, let's say I need to go hunting. I see a bear. Oh, what a beautiful bear. This is an amazing animal, which is true. But if that's my first thought, rather than, oh man, this thing could eat me, I got to be careful how I'm going to act around it, we wouldn't have survived as a species. So we've had to develop this ability to look at how things can hurt us, how it might affect us in a negative way to help us survive. Well, we don't have those same issues today. But because we've had those issues up until really about 100 years ago, we have just built this natural tendency in our DNA to look at things that way. Now that we don't have those same challenges, we still have the same voice at looking things through a negative lens, right? So, like, maybe you're a people pleaser. You want to make everyone happy. Well, that's natural, because if you didn't make people happy in the past, you'd get kicked out of the village and you would have a tough time surviving. Well, you're not going to get kicked out of any village anymore if you're not making everybody happy, but we still have this internal desire to do so. The nice thing about us as humans is we have the ability to think about one thing at a time, and we get to choose what that one thing at a time is. So rather than being worried about all these different things, yes, that might hit you for a split second, but then you have the ability to choose, wait, that's not actually real. I can look at this through a lens that's more positive or productive or more helpful to me, rather than creating this fear and stress and anxiety.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth in that. When we were cavemen and women, we did have that instinctual survival instinct within us saying, okay, this is dangerous. We need to be careful here. Dinosaurs will come eat us. Saber-toothed lions will come out and try to bite us, or whatever was happening. We don't have that issue today, yet those fears still reside within us. And that's an issue because we don't necessarily need those fears. Today, we were born with two fears. We were born with the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. Any other fear that we give ourselves is self-endowed, and oftentimes is not even that relevant. For example, you're afraid of lions. Well, do you live in the jungle? Do you like want to go into the zoo and jump over the fence of the lions and like hang out with them for some reason? Well, if you're afraid of lions, right, this is an internal thing that you have to work with, because why are you so afraid of lions? So, and it doesn't have to be lions. It could be snakes. It could be spiders. It could be whatever the fear you have, but we give it to ourselves. Why do you think people give themselves fears rather than just knowing that they have instinctual fears, try to stay alive fears, but then at the same time, these fears are not really relevant to me today because we live in such a different world?
Well, there might be a couple of reasons. One, I don't think that a lot of us are aware of what we're saying to ourselves. So you have this instinctual fear of the spider or this lion, whatever it is, and you feel that, but rather than becoming aware of what this fear is, and you just let it overtake you, rather than, hey, is this rational? Is this something that makes sense? And so we don't even maybe realize that we're feeling this fear. It's natural. And for me, when I was dealing with my anxieties and my panic attacks, that was really the first step of figuring anything out, was becoming aware of what I'm saying to myself. What are these negative words, these phrases, these images that I'm conjuring up constantly? Once I was aware of that, I was able to stop it and change it to something that was more helpful. That might be part of it, that we are just not even aware of what the negativity is that we're saying to ourselves. I think the other part of it can be is, and I talk about this in the book, is your perception or your perspective. You are looking at all these things through a lens of fear. We have the ability to choose what we think. We have the ability to change our perspective, to change our perception of things. Are you choosing one of fear, right? And that's kind of how you address with that lion. Well, I have this fear of lion, but am I in the jungle? Am I going to climb? No, I don't have to have these things. So I can help eliminate that fear. You're choosing that perspective of rationality to a certain degree, right? So I think those are two big reasons why people hold on to some of these things that are a little bit irrational at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, creating the awareness for what's rational, what's not rational, I think is going to be extremely important for many people because they have a fear of missing out, right? The FOMO. I'm sure you heard of that. FOMO.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Fear of missing out. And guess what? That right there is insignificant to who you are as a person. Yes, I understand peer acceptance. Yes, I understand about being relevant, but who cares what type of phone you have? Who cares what type of car you drive? You essentially care the most. So we give ourselves these things that, or these status quos, to things we have to obtain, to things we have to reach. And then that gives us a lot of stress because we have to be winners. We have to be go getters. We have to be confident. We have to be the breadwinner, the protector, the provider. So we give ourselves these titles, and though those titles be positive, right? Like they're a good thing, we give a negative connotation to them. And that causes a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. I know you said when you were still coaching, you were dealing with a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress. So I wanted to get into that conversation now. It's like we are now giving ourselves good things, right? Good mentality booster things, but we're spinning that negative on it. And it's really causing a lot of anxiety and stress in our life.
Right. So everything I talk about as far as what I was feeling back then and the way I was acting, that's all in hindsight. I didn't, when I'm going through this, I don't realize any of this at the time, but looking at it now, there's a few different things. Part of it was that approval. I was seeking approval of my peers, speaking of other coaches. I wanted approval of people that were watching the games. And it drove this almost obsession with me of, what do I need to do to become a better coach? What do I need to do to prove to everybody that I'm a good coach, that I know what I'm talking about, that I can build these good teams? To a small degree, that can be good, right? That's how you become great at something. You become to obsessed to a certain degree, and you learn everything about it, and you just keep working, and you want to get good at it, and that's good. But mine got pushed to the point where it became an obsession, and that was not good. I was beating myself up saying, what else do I need to do? How can I prove this? And it wasn't this obsession for me to want to become a great coach. It became this obsession for me to want to prove I was a great coach. And now I'm looking for others' acceptance. And that's when things go wrong, because you can't force somebody else to say you're a good coach. You can't force somebody else to think you're a good coach, whatever. So that was a big part of it. But also, I started taking the losses I took really hard, and the wins were a sense of relief, which it shouldn't be what it is. You should really enjoy the wins, right? Because you did something that you wanted to do, you became successful at it, you reached a goal, that's great. If you didn't, look at why. And I almost did the opposite. I beat myself up on every loss. And when we did win, I was just like, okay, well, hopefully we win the next one, right? It was just sort of this, okay, I got through today, what's coming tomorrow? And when you do that for an entire season, 30 games, it's mentally draining. You just beat yourself up. So, it was a lot of different things. I wasn't aware of this thinking. So my self-talk became very bad. And it's just a spiral, right? It's the more you do it, the worse it gets. It leaked from the coaching world into just my life. I found myself becoming short with people around me, just being a more negative person. And I'm not a negative guy. My general disposition is pretty positive and always had been. But I saw during that 3 or 4 year period, I was never really happy. I was always frustrated. Nothing was good enough. Then it culminated with panic attacks. It just got to the point where my body probably couldn't take the negativity and anxiety I was feeding it anymore, and just started to shut down a little bit. But, for me, it was a lot of judgment of myself and wanting to please others to a certain degree. Those were a couple of the bad things that looking back on it now, I see, this is very obvious of the way my mindset was. But when you're in the heart of it, it's hard to see those things.
Yeah, definitely. When you are living in it, it might not feel like, oh, well, this is difficult, or this is an issue that I'm working through. For example, in college, I worked a full-time and a part-time job, and I went to school full-time. I mean, I worked 60 hours a week, had 18 credits for college.
A full load.
Full load. And when I finally left and I was graduated and I didn't have to work my full-time and my part-time job, I could just do my career. I was like, wait, I did all that? And now it's just super easy. I'm like, I'm coming home watching movies. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I just had this influx of time. And I didn't know how much stress I was under or how much I was pushing myself. It was just a regular day. It was just a regular Tuesday for me. Like, I didn't give myself a choice. I had no choice. I had to show up. Sometimes we can get into that realm of people pleasing. Like, if you want to do something for people, you're like, okay, I want to not only make sure I'm good, but I want to make sure everyone else is good. And that causes even more stress tacking on to everything. We do have to be careful with that. You said something great, and I wanted to get into a conversation here. is that you were looking for the approval of other coaches. I think it's good to have like coaches that can be mentors, that can be guides for us, that can give us some advice when we need some advice. But then there's also that other aspect of I'm a different type of person. I'm going to coach differently than other coaches. I'm not going to be like everyone else versus conforming. I make my own path. What do you think is the benefit of creating your own path as a coach versus trying to conform to every other coach and trying to mimic what people do?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. There's a healthy balance in there because as a coach, you're going to come up with very little new stuff that's never been thought of before. So you're going to have to take from all different kinds, right? So if you look at my library, I read hundreds of books on coaches, their style, their philosophies, their journeys, watched videos, articles, all these kinds of things. And I've taken from hundreds, you go to a coaching clinic. Ooh, I really like that drill. Oh, I really like that part of that philosophy, which is great. You have to do that kind of stuff. But you can't coach the way somebody else coaches, right? You can't coach their personality. You have to sort of do your own thing to a certain degree. That takes time. That takes effort. And when I say effort, that takes time. You have to spend alone time thinking about, what's my personality? What do I really want from my players? What am I willing to say or do? What do I feel is okay? What's the most important thing on the court, off the court? All these different things. That just takes time and effort. And, you got to trust in your personality, if that makes sense. The way one coach does it is completely different from the way another coach does it, and they can both win the national title. So there's no perfect formula. For me, that wasn't so much the issue as trying to coach the way other people did. It was me just wanting to prove that I'm a good coach, that I can win, that I know what I'm doing. And that's what really beat me down. But I think if someone tries to take on too many traits or styles that aren't true to who they are, that can turn into something very anxious because you're sort of almost fighting with yourself. Here's what I want to do versus here's what I think I should do versus what that coach does. And that can, people can tell when you're fake, when you're not who you truly are. You can see that with coaches sometimes, if they're trying to mimic a style that's not there. And I think that if you're stealing somebody else's style, you're not going to probably be successful because you don't believe it. Players pick up on that kind of stuff. Just being around other coaches, I can pick up on when they're truly who they are as a person, if they're kind of putting on a show. But for me, it was hey, I want you to think I'm a good coach. That's all I care. Just say I'm a good coach. And that just sort of it's that simple, really. The world of coaching is interesting because it is 100% other people's judgments on you constantly, whether it's your athletic director, your fans in the crowd, the players, the opponents, other coaches. All these people are judging you. And that's just part of the profession, right? It's the same if you're a performer in music, if you are an athlete, right? Your performance is judged by everybody else, which creates a lot of angst in people. So really just being comfortable in who you are. And one thing that I look back on now, and I tell athletes that sort of deal with a little bit, I say, hey, if you can walk out of the game or the performance, whatever it is, and I say, I gave it 100% that I had. I gave it everything I could possibly think of. I tried everything. I gave my full effort. And it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. I didn't have that mindset back then. I cared what everybody else thinks. But now if you can just feel like, hey, I tried my best, what else matters?
Yeah. It is a journey being a coach. I was a swim coach in college. In the beginning, I was extremely self-conscious. Am I doing this right? Am I being a good instructor? Am I having a right balance of fun and work? Are the parents going to, want to continue swimming with me, et cetera, right? What I can say is that when I started, I was not good. I was terrible. I knew how to swim. I knew all the ins and outs of it. I knew about teaching. I just didn't know it in the coaching realm. So that right there kind of helped me learn behaviors, mindsets, reading people really well. When I became a teacher, it was just like a walk in the park because coaching and teaching are extremely alike. So if you can be a great coach, you are most likely going to be a great teacher. If you are a good teacher, you can probably learn how to be a good coach. So I always tell people that it is a journey in the beginning because you do have to find yourself. You will listen to other people. You will find mentors or find other people that are in the work that you do. So maybe other performance coaches, life coaches, mental health coaches. you're going to find people and you're going to say, oh, I like that message. Let me try to incorporate that, or let me try to steal it. What I can say, if you steal it, it's going to feel so weird because you're just going to try to implement something. And I mean, I can't even tell you how many books I read to this day. And you just get all these different methodologies and ideas. And you're like, oh, I'm going to start to implement this in my coaching. And then it's just not you. And it feels just so weird, where it should be a comfortable environment when you're working with a client. But if you're just trying to do what everyone else did or follow someone else's format, you're going to find, as you said, that you won't be successful. So we do have to find success in ourselves. So when you were getting into that mindset where you would lose, it sucked, you would win, okay, I'm glad I won. So a little bit of validation there. I wanted to get into a conversation of what is good enough then. Is winning good enough? Is losing and learning good enough? Is just playing the best game we can good enough? What is good enough?
I think all of the above. It's a personal decision. I think that it's tricky to say just winning is good enough because there's a lot that you don't control in that sense. So I kind of almost go back to, if you can say you put in your full effort, you did everything you could, that's good enough. And by doing that, there's a thing that I work on with the athletes. It's our performance review. We look at how we prepared. We look at how we performed, both physically and mentally. There's a big thing that I talk about with athletes, and that's controlling the controllables. And there's only two things you control. That's your actions and your thoughts, right? So if you've done everything you can, you've eaten correctly, you got good rest, you've prepared physically for whatever you need to do. You've done everything you can. You've prepared mentally. You did your mental reps, your mental warm up, everything. But you go out there and you lose because of, some crazy bounce that the ball took. You can't say, well, I'm not good enough because I didn't win. That's just sports. That's just life. So if you've taken care of everything you can control, I think that's good enough. Sometimes, and it's when we do this performance review, we say, I didn't get a great night's sleep the night before. I didn't really feel rested. Okay, why? Were you up too late, or did you just have trouble sleeping because you were so excited? Well, there's nothing, if you just have trouble sleeping, well, there's nothing you could do. That's just part of it. Let's figure out how we can get a better night's sleep. If it was because you're playing video games all night, all right, that's your fault. Now you're the reason that you lost and you didn't perform well. Let's not do that next. So it's one of those things where I think everybody's definition is going to be a little bit different. But I think as long as, again, you can look back and say, I tried my hardest. That's all that really matters, right? And then, so for example, when I'm speaking up at a conference here soon, and the way I look at my talk is I'm going to do everything I can to prepare, and I'm going to do everything I can to hope that those people enjoy their conference. But I know not everybody's going to love my talk. If there's 100 people in the room, there's going to be at least a couple people that don't like me. But if I've done everything that I can and I tried my hardest, I'm okay if a couple people don't like me. Now, if I can figure out why they didn't and I can make some adjustments to hopefully help more people enjoy it, then great. But if they just don't like me because I have a silly haircut and I talk funny, well, okay, that's whatever. So I think that everyone's definition is a little bit different, but I think if you can look at an overall what's good enough, just giving it your best shot. If you're giving it your best shot, what else can you really ask for?
Yeah, and you're right. Not everyone's going to like you, nor should you want everyone to like you, because if everyone likes you, you're probably doing the wrong thing. You want to get into the habit of doing what is best for your growth. And sometimes people are going to look at your growth as, oh, they're getting too far ahead of me. Let me hate them because I'm hating on their success. So it's about the hater mentality there.
When you say that, I actually heard a comment the other day. It was somebody that said, I've never got hate from somebody that was doing better than me.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that was, I kind of struck a chord. Like, yeah, like no one has ever been super successful and just been like, Jeff, you're not doing what you're supposed to. So it's funny that as long as someone else is doing well, they're happy everyone else is doing well. It's the people that hate a little bit more, the ones that are struggling or have an issue going on, which is what I was doing when I was dealing with my anxiety and my panic attacks. Was I was just being more negative. I wouldn't say I was hating on people, but I wasn't happy for their success the way I should be. Right? My friend did something great. Oh, fantastic, man. I'm so happy for it. It was, oh, great. When's my turn? That's sort of the mentality I had a little bit during that time. So when you're getting the hate, it might be a good thing sometimes because it means you're doing well.
Yeah. And then even if you get hate from above, it's typically from a mentor or a coach because they're
in a constructive way, I think.
Exactly. So it's like, hey, you have so much more potential, Jeff. I want you to be the person that I know you can be. How do we get there together? I'm not hating on you, but I am presenting it in a way saying that you're not showing up 100%, Jeff. Let's figure this out.
Right.
And there's a big difference between someone hating on you to see your downfall and someone looking down at you so they can lift you up. It's important that we know the difference between that. And that is what we do as coaches. That is what you do, Jeff. That is what you help your clients realize, because you want them to be in a better place. You want them to grow. You want them to prosper. You want them to prepare so they can perform. And you want them to get out of that internal rival that they have within them, whether it be from their DNA or from their self-talk that is happening in our world today. The world is moving at such a fast pace, and coaches have been one of those things that have been a luxury, but they have been steadily becoming more of a necessity because people have so much anxiety, so much stress, so much drama that they didn't have before. They don't learn proper coping mechanisms in school. That means they have to figure out how can they do it later on in life. This is where we begin, right? You have already been through all that mental struggle, all that hardship and anxiety, and now you're helping people get out of that and become aware of that so they can take action. And it's so important for that to happen and to occur into adults, because adults will try to take a side approach to most things, but they do have to tackle stuff like this head on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no way to avoid the negative stuff, right? I think that you can do a lot of putting band-aids on it, but it's just going to stay there. I think the toughest thing is becoming aware of what you're saying to yourself, aware of the negativity. And I think we have such difficult time with that in life because like you just said, there's so much going on. You know, if you're not chasing your kids, you're going to some class, or you're going to work, or you have to run errands, or you got to take care of the house. There's so much going on that you need to take time just to be calm and breathe and sit. You know, plus and minus for me, you know, I don't have kids. And when COVID happened, it was a lot of time alone. And that was I was about a year into my journey of trying to figure out all the self-help stuff at the time. It gave me a lot of time to just sit and read and think and contemplate. And that was a huge step in me becoming aware of what I'm saying, figuring out what I believe, what I don't believe, how am I going to deal with this? And so in a sense, I was lucky during that time because I just had about a year where there wasn't really much going on. That I think is a huge thing, especially for adults, that we need to be able to have this time to just be quiet, which is so hard to come by. But I think if people are able to do that, just calm the life around them, then they're able to start to notice what the dialogue is going inside. But if you're running around all day and you don't give yourself that 5 minutes, you're never going to realize what is going on up there. So I think that's a big challenge that people have going on today.
And our conversation is evolving because we started with just the fear, understanding that we can be our own worst enemy, to understanding that we do have things that we have to deal with throughout life that we might have control over or we might not have control over. And regardless if you have control or if you don't have control, we do have to take ownership. We do have to take responsibility for our life. We can't just throw things in a corner. We just can't wait till tomorrow. We have to take action today. And I want people to understand that. As we begin to wrap up, I would love for you to give us some final words and to tell the audience where they can find you.
Absolutely. You know, as far as final words, it's one of these things that I really realized that we're all going through this to some degree. It's not just a good or bad. It's a constant thing that you always have to work on, right? That inner rival is always going to be there to some degree. Our goal is to notice it and silence it when we notice it, and then put in something positive, productive that is going to help us on our journey, whether it's improving your sports to some degree, becoming a performer, or just getting through the day. You know, a lot of the things that I talk about in my book, they are geared towards sports, but man, every single one of them, as I wrote, it's like, oh, this is me in life. This is me in life. This is me. So it's for anything. And that's one of the fun things about sports for me, is that they are such a teacher in life if you use them correctly. If you're ever looking to find out more about how to silence your inner rival, you can find my book on Amazon. It's Inner Rival, Silencing the Negativity Within. I have a website. It's www.inner-rival.com. I have all the social medias out there, but I'm happy to work with athletes, non-athletes in any sort of realm of issue that they might be dealing with. So whether it's a group or an individual, an organization, this can help anybody. So anyone wants to work and silence their inner rival, hopefully that book helps them along the way. And I really want to thank you for bringing me on today and letting me help out a little bit.
Of course. And I want to thank you so much for coming on. I'll definitely be throwing all those links in the description box below so people can easily find you, reach out to you. I encourage everyone to check out your book on Amazon and then to begin the process of learning how to silence that internal rival and getting into the mindset that's going to help your champion version of yourself become external.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you so much, Jeff, for coming on. Great conversation today. All right, everyone. I'd like to thank you so much for watching that interview with Jeff and myself. As you can see, mental health is going to be a rising problem in the world. It's not even just Western society. People will do all they can in their days and they'll find that there's still not enough. How do we get out of that mindset? How do we get into the mindset that we are enough? How do we get into the mindset that we can make some big changes in our life today? It's not going to be as simple as, okay, I'm going to show up. I'm going to write down all my negativities and be grateful. It's a start. Sometimes we need people in our life, someone in our life that's going to say, hey, I can see this within you. Just looking at my life as the example, from me starting off my coaching career and swimming and then going into teaching and having cooperating teachers and working with other teachers and mentors, I had some self-doubt. I had some internal conflict that I was working with and I had to get over. And I said, you know what? I need to do better. I need to be better. How do I get better? And regardless of how much I pushed myself, told myself to do things, it wasn't until I had those people chirping at me saying, hey, you need to do this. You need to get this done. You can get this done. Then I started to take more action. And even to this day, if I get a coach, get a trainer, I'm inherently night and day better because it is so powerful. The power of coaching can help you with your anxiety, help you with your stress. And it's not so much that you don't have the stress and the anxiety anymore. It's almost a part of life. Now, is it healthy to have large amounts of anxiety and stress? No, but it is healthy to have some bits of stress. It is healthy to maybe have a little bit of anxiety, but anxiety is more of a mindset. So if you're having a hard time with that, if you are trying to figure out, well, how can you start to win more than you lose, or how can you start to make some changes, some big changes in your life, I encourage you to reach out to Jeff, reach out to us at Reverend Concepts, and start to get the mindset that's going to help evolve your current situation. I understand that right now you might not think it's worth it. You might not be ready for it, or you are waiting for the perfect opportunity. But the thing about life is that life is not going to give you the perfect opportunity. Life is not going to give you the end all be all, here you go, easy ticket, and you're just going to be successful. It's going to take dedication, hard work, consistency, and it's going to take a character that you build that's going to be about you. Not trying to copy everyone else, not trying to people please everyone else. What do you need to bring to the world? What can you bring to the table? And when you can realize that, then you're going to start to see that that internal rival that you have within you becomes that champion that you're going to show the world externally. My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach. If you have any questions, you can email me coachinginsession@gmail.com. And I will see everyone on the next episode of Coaching in Session. Until then, everyone take care.